live.
Okay, so let's solve some exercises from the beginner challenge. So, for instance, in this one, we have to check if an item exists in a set. See, we have this function where we have to fill this. What? The way to do it would be function exists in set. We have two arguments, set and value, and we return set, and then the method would be.
Can you ask them? Maybe they know, right?
Someone knows. Has, quite straight away. Set.has, and then the value we want to check if exists or not. So just let's test it.
If the first variable is not called set, will it still work? So for example, it's called
Yes. Yeah.
whatever, and then you just use it instead of set.
Yes.
Yeah?
Then you have to check. So when it gets called the function, you are passing the first argument, and it could be as long as it's a set. It's the way we are calling it, because how do you call a set? A set would be the most accurate way to call it. But you could call it, I don't know, collection, or I don't know, just any name you would like.
So a set is it's a collection of any data.
So, yes, it's a collection of data that is not repeated. All values are unique.
So if you were given an array and you want it to be a set, you actually have to put that notation first. Okay.
Yes, sorry.
I'm just saying it's kind of like referring to data in that set. So a set is defined by having that new set first before the actual information.
Yes, the way to define a set is new set, and then you open the parentheses, and you have usually an array and iterable set of data.
We'll do a workshop to explain, obviously, how set works, right? I mean, once again, it was just out of coincidence that you came across that particular question. But you can think set like an array. You know an array? Yeah, Donald, Boris. Yeah. Can you repeat values in an array?
Yes.
Yeah, apple, orange, banana. Yeah, that's valid, right? You can have repeated values. So set is like an array without any duplicates. In other words, if you try to add the same value multiple times, set will ignore the repeated values. Okay? So we'll see the differences, we'll see how to transform set into an array, how to transform array into set, because you can exchange them depending on what you need. And at a very personal level, I don't like the API, set.has. I don't like that. Not because I don't think that sounds natural and human friendly. Yeah, has, I think it's easy to read, to understand. It's because we never had the verb has in JavaScript. If you've been dealing with arrays, what we have is things like includes. So now they created it into a new verb into JavaScript. I don't feel particularly comfortable dealing with that. But yeah, anyway, that's the way you check if a list of values that are part of a set include or not that particular value we're passing on this second argument.
Okay.
Anything else? Right? So question number 4 then, right?
Yes. Let's go to the next question. So how do you spell the name of a rock star? Some people struggle. So we have to use the foreign looping structure. Now. So basically here we have to push to this array the different characters in the name. So the way to do it would be.
So do you know how do you add an element to an array? Push. So what push does? Where the element gets added? On top, at the beginning of the array, at the end, in the middle, where? To the end. And how do you add an element to the beginning of the array? Unshift. That's correct. Yeah? So in this particular case, where do we want to add each individual letter, each individual character? At the beginning of the array or at the end of the array? At the end.
It's gonna be after
One
the
after
other.
the other. What will happen if we add it at the beginning?
We're gonna have that in reverse.
Correct, it will reverse the array. Eh? If I got apple, A, P, P, L, E, right? If you add each letter at the beginning, we will be reversing the string. We will have E, L, P, or whatever, apple to the way around this. Yeah?
Okay, so we have to write the name of the array, result, dot push. And now can someone tell me what would happen if I do this? What would be result?
0, 1, 2.
Yes, would be the indexes of, yes, very well. So now the way to do it would be name. Okay. And now if we test,
Do you remember we learned that on, I think it was Thursday or Friday, when talking about how to dynamically access properties of an object? Right, no one remembers. No, I don't mind, to be honest. I told you, please check JavaScript objects beginner, question number 3. Yeah? That question is one of the most important ones on the entire training program. So remember, JavaScript objects beginner, question number 3. There we explain that weird syntax at Esteban type with the square brace.
okay, I'm going to test it. Confetti. Any question? No, I'll go to the next one.
I think that
Yes.
what you have to declare the left key is a bit confusing.
What a for in but
You have to declare the variable left key.
But you are creating,
Why it's not only key?
it's not only key, what do you mean?
Why you have to tell me that it's a variable and not
in the
a-
wrong
You have to declare it.
the thing, right?
Yeah. Usually in something like arrow function, you declare the variable as a parameter. It's already JavaScript already knows that it's a variable. Why should put let key for telling him that it's a variable?
Because if you don't pass the word let, the key variable will become global. It will work, but it's considered an anti-pattern.
Okay.
Yeah?
Because if you put in let Andrea, you're keeping the behavior just in your block of code and you're not having it available for the whole application because it's gonna mess up your algorithm. Pretty much if you're doing the same thing the second time, you're gonna override this behavior with another variable that you're gonna declare later. Pretty much that's the idea, I think, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right. That's advanced JavaScript, and we'll cover that towards the end of the bootcamp. Okay? So for now, you are not expected to understand why every time you create a new variable, you have to add the let prefix. For now, just do it. And towards the end of the bootcamp, we'll explain what a scope is, what the context is, what a block is, what are the consequences of not following these guidelines, and all this type of things.
Okay, so next exercise. Oops. So we have to count how many unique values we have in a given set. So the way, can someone tell me how to do it?
So what we want to see? We want to see the size of the set, right?
So
Size for
Size?
Size, length, I don't know, which one?
Size.
The size?
size? And why not length?
Because it's on array and this is not array.
Can you say it louder, please?
I think length is for array and size
Yes.
is I think.
The size is for
Set.
sets. Yes, exactly.
You see what I told you before, I didn't like the syntax of set, because it's reinventing the wheel. I mean, if in JavaScript, since 1995, we've been using a word called length, why all of a sudden now someone decided to rename it to size? It's very confusing. It takes me a while to understand that. But hey, it's what it is, right? So
Wrong current.
Size, because it's a property. Instead of, you're not calling a method. It's just a property that has a value inside. It's not running any function.
Can we use size on array?
No, no. It's just for sets. That's what he said. Is
That doesn't work for
no,
set.
no.
I'm sure there is a reason they changed the API completely.
I think probably the reason is size versus length. On length of array, you're pretty much having like the length of the characters, but here, because it's a set, you might have like different words, so you cannot, I don't know, have the length of, because, for example, this is the size of the array, so you have like 3 words opposing with the length of characters there.
I don't get that flooring. I don't get that. If you got a string flooring, can I do flooring.length?
Yeah.
What will flooring.length return?
The number of characters.
Correct, which is 6. It works, right? It's fine. And if I got an array of apple and orange, can I do array.length?
Yeah.
And what will it return? 2. If I got a set of 3 countries, why I cannot do set.length? It's the same, right? Length works regardless of whether you have a string, an array, but in that case,
Length accepts parameters.
no, it's not a function. No, it's the same. It's just a property, like size. It's the same. I'm sure there is a reason. To be honest, personally, I don't know the reason. So if any of you can find a convincing reason why set changed the semantics that have been running over 24 years, I'll be more than happy to listen.
For not getting confused between set and array. So
But once again, then tell me the reason why string and arrays share the same syntax, even though they are different. An array is not the same as a string, but then suddenly set change the syntax. Why? I mean, we're discussing. This is not a discussion to try to figure out, right? But if you got some time and you want to search on Google, maybe you'll find an answer. Maybe, I don't know the answer. Maybe you'll find it. Cool.
Okay, so let's test it. Yes.
Awesome.
Confetti.
Set.size. Let's remember it. Anything else? Any questions for Esteban? No? Cool. Thank you, Esteban. Talking about upper intermediate. Do you want to cover any particular question? Reduce, fantastic. That's a fantastic question, Andrea. Yeah, let's do that. So let me find it. Here you go. So let's do reduce. Is it the first time we come across reduce? No?
No.
All right, so let's do it from the beginning. All right, let me jump. Do you remember which question was that? Was the last one? All right, so 2, 3, 4, 5. Here you go, you're right. So let's talk about reduce. This is arguably the most powerful method in JavaScript ever created. Yeah, so that will enable you many doors. I told you last week that today the most important data structure in JavaScript is the array. Yeah? So as soon as you start dealing with intermediate and especially expert challenges, naturally speaking, you will tend to transform everything into an array. And this is mostly because of reduce. Yeah? So how reduce works? Let me change the problem. I'm not going to solve that problem. I'm going to solve a different problem. Imagine that I have an array of 1, 2, and 3. And I want to create a function sum. I want to add all the values in an array. And my argument, can you give me a good argument name here? Say it again? Numbers, fine. Numbers or values, right? That will be fine. Cool. So now, how would you, I mean, you know what that function will return, right? So what is the result of adding 1 plus 2 plus 2 plus 3? 6, fantastic. That's the typical stupid question I ask to see who is paying attention, right? Let's return 6. So how can you add these three values in JavaScript?
Let's
Return
map
numbers
it.
Return what?
numbers.
Numbers?
Dot reduce.
All right, yeah. Eventually, right? Eventually, of course, but without using reduce.
Mathematical operator, yes.
Numbers.
By looping over the.
Looping. Number, all right, numbers was Camila. See, like that?
Yeah, then we need to loop.
So Camila, sorry about that, is suggesting,
Yeah, the second one.
I mean, do you think that will work or not? That will work, right? Technically speaking, yes, but what happens if we go crazy and we decide to add a fourth number? And we are, as humans, unable to add these four numbers, mentally speaking, so we need an algorithm. Will that work? Not anymore, right? And someone may be thinking, no problem at all, let's add a fourth one, and then problem solved. But I hope you get the point, right? This function is very weak. It highly relies on a specific number of values. We don't want that. We want to create strong algorithms that regardless of what the input is, they manage to generate a valid output. But the function to me is not good enough. So dynamically speaking, we could do, look at how crazy I am now. So can I do total equals 0 and then for I equals 0, I is less than numbers dot length I plus plus. Can any of you guys complete this algorithm? What do I do here?
Total plus
Total plus
equals.
equals, we'll see what that means. Plus equals what?
Total.
The what?
Total again.
Total equals total plus total, something like that?
So we will start from 0 and keep
All right.
going.
So according to Camila, let's return, what do we return here?
Total.
The total, all right. So let's read what Camila is doing here. Total, that's a shorthand of total equals total plus total. Yeah, so Camila is doing total equals 0 plus 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. All right, next iteration. Now total is whatever the total was, 0 plus 0. So we keep adding 0 multiple times.
Total number and then square brackets.
So now you change your mind to numbers. What?
No, forget the total. So
Forget the total.
Total plus equals. Yeah, okay.
That's the same, yeah? So what do we put here?
Square brackets I.
Square brackets I. I like that, Chuck. Yeah? So let's try to understand that. If I had a breakpoint, do you remember breakpoints, guys, last week? If I had a breakpoint on this line, Fish, can you tell me how many times it will stop here? Once, all right? So Fish said once. Do you agree? Not? Why? Florin said 4 times. So Florin is right, Fish, because we have a for loop. So we will start from I equals 0, and then we will go through each individual element on the array. Because our array has 4 numbers, we will stop 4 times. Yeah? So, can anybody tell me on the first iteration number 1, yeah? If I stop here, what's the value of total the first time I stop there?
1.
Wrong. Before running that line, yeah? Literally here, I stop here. That's correct, Rochelle. The first value of total is 0. And what's I?
1.
It's 1 or is 0?
0.
It's 0, that's correct. The first time I is 0. So what is numbers of I?
1.
It's 1. I is 0, numbers on index 0 is the number 1. Correct. And now, let's go to the next iteration. That's a bit hard to read, guys. Don't ask me why. I'm not sure if I can. Why there is a gap here? All right, let me change the approach a bit. See, oh, all right. So just hold on, guys. I'm changing to desktop mode just to be able to increase the available space on the screen. So that was question number 5. It won't take long, I promise. All right, here you go. So that's what we were talking about, right? All right, so in this particular exercise, so what's on the second iteration? Can anybody tell me what's the value of the total? 1, correct, because on the first iteration, total was equal to whatever total was 0 plus 1. 1. What's the value of I?
1.
It's 1, correct, because on every iteration, we do 1 plus plus. We increase 1 by 1, right? So what's number on index number 1? 2, correct. Index number 0, index number 1. Iteration number 3. What's the value of total? 3. Why 3? Because total was, whatever the total was, 1 plus 2. 3. What's the value of I? 2, correct. And what's number on index 2? 3. That's correct, yeah? Index 0, index 1, index 2. Iteration number 4. What's the value of total? Why 6, Alex? Correct. The total was 3, and now we do the new total is whatever the total was, 3, plus numbers on index number 2, which is 3. 3 plus 3 equals, generally speaking, 6. What's the value of I? It's 3. So, what's numbers on index 3? 4, correct. What happened on iteration number 5? What's the total? All right, you said it's 10. Let's see if that's right or wrong. What's the value of the index on iteration number 5? Oh, Alex said, wait a minute, this is wrong, right? So Alex is thinking that there is no iteration number 5. Why not, Alex? Correct. Correct. We already analyzed the loop, right? So there is no iteration number 5. It only runs 4 times. First, second, third, and fourth. And that's it. Yeah, we'll leave the loop after iteration number 4. So that's not right. That's not right. After iteration number 4, what's the eventual value of total? It will be whatever the total was, 6 plus what?
4.
Plus 4, correct, Anita? 6 plus 4 is 10. Yeah? So that's the way, historically speaking, you deal with basic loops. You see, you create a variable, I. To be honest, following what we discussed before with Andrea, you should do that, right? You create a new variable, I. But anyway, you create a variable, and then until that condition, or while the condition is satisfied, then do something, and then increase the counter. That's a classic for loop. This is fairly uncommon these days, however. Yeah? Fish, you have a question? No, sorry. So even though that's still valid, we will be able to solve the problem. It will be a bit strange to come across that piece of code. Because thankfully, I mean, at the end of the day, think about that. The only thing we want to do is to loop over all the elements of the array. Yeah? From the first to the last, that's it. Why, if we just want to check all the values of the array, we need something as complicated as increasing a variable by 1, checking the condition? That doesn't really make any sense, right? Thankfully, today with JavaScript, we got something called reduce. So with reduce, let me show you how to solve the very same problem much easily. So let me get rid of all we've done, and let me present you the syntax of reduce. So with reduce, you can do numbers.reduce, and then we pass two arguments. Look at the syntax. On the first one, we got what we technically speaking refer as the accumulator. I will rename that in a minute. On the second argument, we have each individual number of the array. So let me call it number. And finally, a very important thing. Here, we can pass a new argument, which is the default value of the accumulator. In other words, if you want to add 4 numbers, what's the default value of your math operation? What's the default result of adding multiple numbers?
First number. Yeah.
No, let me change the question. If you got 4 coins, you want to say how much money you have in your pocket. By default, how much money you have? 0, right? And then you do, oh, I found a coin of £1. Internally, what you do is 0 plus 1, right? I got 0, I got 1, 0 plus 1, I got £1, right? And then you have another coin of £2, lucky enough, right? So then, mentally speaking, how much money you got? Whatever you got before was 1 plus the new coin, right? 1 plus 2, now you got 3. But by default, I hope you agree with me, you got 0, right? So that's the same thing. Here you said, okay, you want to add multiple numbers. By default, what's the result of your math operation? It's 0. And now,
Something like total equal to 0, which will
no one is listening to you, unfortunately.
sorry. Is it something like we assume total equal to 0 in the historical iteration, which you explained?
Yeah, that's correct.
Something like that, which we set as default.
Yeah, that's correct. That's the default, guys. I told you this is called the accumulator. To me, accumulator feels a bit weird, sounds a bit weird, right? I prefer to improve the semantics. So, can I call that something like total? I hope you agree with me. Now it's a bit easier to read, right? That's the total. That's the result of adding all the numbers. And now, look. How many times, once again, I'm adding a breakpoint in this line. So Fish, can you tell me now how many times my breakpoint will stop on line number 10? It's still 4 times. That's the same thing. You see? It's still 4 times because the reduce algorithm will check on each individual number. So on the first iteration, number will be 1. On the second, number will be 2. On the third, number will be 3. And on the fourth, number will be 4. And now the tricky part is with total. Total is a variable that we keep passing from one iteration to the next one. Whatever iteration number 1 returns will be the value of the total on iteration number 2. Whatever iteration number 2 returns will be the total on iteration number 3. Whatever iteration number 3 returns will be the total on iteration number 4. That's the way it works. So let me solve it and then I'll explain that. Look at how simple this is. Why? Let's figure out. Iteration number. That's correct, Andrea. I did it on purpose to see if you were paying attention. Right, iteration number 1. Can you tell me what's the value of total by default?
0.
It's 0, that's correct, yeah? By default, that's the value of the total, 0, correct? So now, what's the value of number on the first iteration? 1. Do you agree with Anita or not?
No, it's 0. It's index 0.
So there are 2 opinions. Anita thinks number refers to the first number. Florin thinks number refers to the index. Based on my semantics, do you think that refers to the first digit, to the first value, or to the index? To the value, that's correct. That's why I call it number, because that's a number. So the first number in the list is number 1. So what do we return on the first iteration? We return 1, that's correct. 0 plus 1 equals 1. So then 1 will be the new value of the total variable on iteration number 2. What is total? It's 1, because that's what we return on the previous iteration. What's the number? 2. What do we return? 10. Why 10?
No, she said 3.
Ah, sorry, I heard 10. Yes, correct. You're right, guys. 3, because we return whatever the total was, 1, plus the current number. We're here, right? 2. 1 plus 2, 3. All right, iteration number 3. What's the total? 3, correct. What's the number? 3, because now we're here, yeah? What do we return? 3 plus 3, which is 6, right? And iteration number 4, what's the total? 6. Anyone apart from Florin, what's the number? 4. What do we return? 10. Iteration number 5, what's the total? 10. Once again, there is no iteration number 5. That's a trap, classic trap in a job interview. They want to see if you understood the flow. Yeah? There is no iteration number 4. In other words, sorry, no iteration number 5. At the end of iteration number 4, whatever we return here, that will be the eventual value that will be returned. So that's essentially the same thing we've done before. But I hope you agree with me, even though it may sound a bit more complicated, in reality, it simplifies your life, because you don't have to worry about creating a new variable I, doing the check I is less than array.length, incrementing the I. This is happening automatically. Yeah? Reduce will automatically stop on each iteration of the array for you. Make sense? Reduce, the most complex yet powerful method in JavaScript. So make sure you master it.
So if you keep on changing the date from 7,
If
maybe your website allows people to sign up, and you're checking to see how many people have signed up.
Yep.
This is the most powerful and professional way to do it, because it's just going to keep adding more data into it.
that's correct, Fizz. That's absolutely correct. In this particular case, we've used reduce to calculate the total, to add multiple numbers. But as Fizz suggested, in reality, there are multiple applications of reduce. Yeah? We will check them through the next weeks. From now on, every time we use reduce, I will create this matrix. And I will strongly invite you to do the same thing, because that really helps you to understand if you can follow the sequence of iterations. Any questions? No? I mean, in reality, we haven't solved the problem, right? That was just an example. We are adding multiple numbers. But in this example, we want to build something different. We don't want to add multiple values. We want to find the highest value in a list. Does that make sense? You see? What types of values? We want to find the highest number. From a human point of view, it takes milliseconds to grasp what the problem is, right? 3 minus 6, 16, 9, 11, the highest number is 16, right? Easy. But technically speaking, let's find out how to solve the problem. All right, so numbers.reduce. So let me show an example. If numbers is 1, 3, minus 2, what's the highest number in this list, guys? 3, correct. All right, so now let's build the matrix. Or let's solve that line. So remember, highest, that's the accumulator, has the value returned by the previous iteration. And interestingly enough, what's the default value here? If you want to check what's the highest value in a list, what's your default value? Say it again, Alex? The first number in the list? Zero. All right. All right. I like that, Fish. That's wrong, but I like that. No, the thing is, okay, all right. In this particular case, it will work. But we'll see in a scenario where that won't work. So, now, what do we return to the next iteration? We'll see. What's the default value of highest at the moment? It's 0. That's what you said. You said that, Chris, right? You said that the default value of the highest, by default, hey, my highest number is 0. Let's try to find a number greater than that. So, in here, I can set a condition. Can I check if the given number is highest than the highest? So can I do, if number is greater than highest, do something else, do something else. So what do I return to the next iteration if the current number is highest than the current highest number? Return what? Number. That's correct, because now we got a new candidate. I found a number, 1, for instance, will be greater than 0. So my new maximum number is 1. And else, what do we return? What will be the new highest number? The highest, whichever it was, we keep it, we respect it. We just need to keep passing the value to the next iteration. So, based on this exercise, on this data, let's run the iteration thingy to make sure we understood that. I got an array of 3 numbers, 1, 3, and -2. So, iteration 1. What's the value of highest? Octavian. That's correct. It's 0 because that's the default, right? All right, so if that's the highest, so what's the first value, Andrea?
Yes, 1.
That's correct, yeah? That's correct, 1. So, what do we return here, Chuck? That's correct. Why? Because the number is greater, number is 1, is greater than the actual highest, that was 0. So we have a new candidate. We have a new candidate, right? So we return 1, that's correct. Iteration number 2. Rochelle, what's the value of highest? Wrong. Wrong. Not 0. On the first iteration, we said, is number 1 greater than highest 0? Yes, 1 is greater than 0. So we return, we update the value of highest to the number. So what is that? 2, wrong. It is 1. Whatever, once again, we return something, it will be the new value on the next iteration of highest. Yeah, that's why it's 1. So now, Florin, what's the new number?
The number being 3.
3, correct. So now, Anita, what do we return?
3.
Yes, you're right. Because is number 3 greater than number 1? Yes. So we are passing, we are updating the value of highest to the new highest, which is number 3. So now, on the next iteration, Camila, what's the current value of highest?
3.
That's correct. Yeah, Rochelle, you look, what we return in one iteration gets passed to the next highest. We return 3, that's the new highest. So, what's the new number, Fish? Look, on the first iteration, number was 1. On the second iteration, number was 3. On the third iteration, number is -2. Correct. So, Alex, what do we return?
3.
Why 3 and not -2?
3 is higher.
Correct. We check, is number -2 greater than 3? No, right? -2 is not greater than -3. No worries. Just keep passing whatever the highest was, which is 3. That works. This algorithm should work. And to prove that, let's just run it. Right, it doesn't work. You remember what I told you before? That fish was wrong, but I really like the idea. So can anybody tell me why it doesn't really work on the last assertion?
Because it doesn't
said the
consider
value is
the
zero.
negative numbers.
Because 0 is higher than those numbers.
Correct, correct, correct. In this particular exercise, in this particular scenario, if, let's run it, right? So my numbers are -3 and -1. So, once again, iteration number 0, not 0, 1. So let's start again. What's the value of highest Octavian?
No idea.
I asked you the same question before, and you did it right. So that means that you found the right answer just by accident.
No, yeah, 0.
Why 0?
Because the index of, let's say, the first number in the array is 0.
Wrong,
That's what I
wrong, massively wrong. Can anyone tell Octavian why? He's right. I mean, the thing is, you got the right answer, but you didn't get the job because you haven't been able to argue your answer. I prefer you to give a wrong answer, but at least be able to explain it. Yeah. So, Fish, you were about to say something. We're talking about this particular array. It's -1. All right. So, you think is... I want anybody to tell me what's the default value of the highest.
0.
Why 0?
Because the initial value.
Base,
You
the
said
base value is set.
I cannot zoom the screen more than that. But that argument tells you the default value of highest. Once again, if you're checking how many coins you have in your pocket, you need a default. Yeah? Or let me rephrase the question. In this particular case, what's the most valuable coin you have in your pocket? By default, what's the most valuable amount of money you have? 0, right? By default, I got 0. And then, if I have a coin greater than 0, I cannot have a coin with -0, right? With negative value. But if I have a coin, now the greatest number will be represented by the first coin I find. Because by definition, any coin will have a value greater than 0. So the first value of highest is 0, because that's what we are setting as the default. And now, what's the first number, Andrea?
-3.
That's correct, Andrea. It's -3 because that's the first value on the list, yeah? So, Chuck, what do we return?
0.
That's correct. We return 0 because 0 is still greater than -3. That's fine. We go to iteration number 2. So, yep,
For every array with numbers,
yep.
are you saying that the highest value is 0?
No, not for every array.
But for the arrays with negative numbers, the highest is 0?
No, I never say that. I'm trying to prove you were wrong, but I'm trying to argue that.
So the initial highest on this one is 0 because you've set the initial value at 0.
But I thought that was wrong, that he's going to do that.
Yeah, but he's just explaining if we were to keep it at 0, this is what it would be.
Yeah, I'm trying to explain why, in some specific circumstances, having 0 as the default value may not be okay. And this is a good example. If all the values on the array are negative, we are going to see why this is not going to work, right? So now, Rochelle, what's the highest on the second iteration? That's correct, you're right. It's still 0 because that's what we returned before. So what's the current number, Florin?
-1.
That's correct. So what do we return, Anita?
0.
Why still 0?
Because 0 is greater than minus
That's
1.
correct. You see, still the highest number is 0. So iteration number 3. What's the value, Camila? The highest value here.
0, do we have another iteration?
My name is calling me.
What do you think? Do you agree with Camila? Does she get the job?
Say what you're going to say.
I'm saying am I being called again to do another iteration if there isn't any value in the array?
There is no third iteration, Camila. Yeah. So that means we only got 2 numbers, right, on the array. That this algorithm will return number 0. From a human point of view, if I tell you, give me the maximum number between -3 and -1, would you say that the max number between these two is 0?
No.
That feels a bit weird, right? It's not 0. That's why this algorithm works fine if there is any positive number on the list. But it fails if there are no positive numbers. So we know the problem, and now the question is, how do we solve it?
So if you don't pass through an initial value, doesn't the highest just take the first value in the array?
All right, so Alex gave the perfect answer that I'm not going to explain now because I want everybody to struggle a bit with that. Before going into that sexy answer, so let me invite you to do something a bit dirty. So please ignore whether the solution is clean enough or not, technically speaking. Tell me if that will work. Yeah? It's a bit dirty, but at least, boom, I got confetti, right? Why? Because I've assumed AA. By default, I'm going to take a very negative value. So, you know, unless any of the tests has a deeper value than that, it will work. Yeah? But obviously, that's not very clean. That's not very clean. Is there a way in JavaScript? So to me, that wouldn't be acceptable. Yeah? If I see that on the code, I will reject it immediately. But is there a way in JavaScript to get the minimum number possible? Does that make any sense? Infinity. Well, that was very romantic, but we don't get that idea, that number in JavaScript as such.
Maybe math.min.
Math.min. No. Second, no, wrong. I'll show you a trick. Yes, in JavaScript, in modern JavaScript, there is a way to get the lowest number you can ever imagine, or the lowest rational number that your computer support, right? If you want to be a bit less romantic. And the way to do that, if I go to Google and I search JavaScript get min number, that's what we are looking for, right? That's interesting. Look at that. Number.minvalue represents the smallest. I'm not telling you that's the right answer. I'm just doing a bit of Googling. Would you help? Number.minvalue properly represents the smallest positive numeric value representable in JavaScript. Does that make sense? That's something that comes with JavaScript. I'll tell you something. I never use that. I used to work with a different syntax, but it looks like now JavaScript is supporting something called number.minvalue, which is great. Yeah? In other words, if I go back to my code and I paste that, essentially, I'm telling JavaScript, my default value is the lowest number possible you can type in JavaScript. And that means that by definition, every other number will be at least as big as that one. It will be probably bigger. So if we run it, oh, that one doesn't work. And I think you know why it doesn't work.
Didn't it say the lowest positive value?
No, but look, process as minus infinite. No, I think the reason why it doesn't work is because that's new in JavaScript. That may have been added very recently. I need to check the supported browsers. That's a bit weird. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I mean, once again, I've never used that one. I knew there was an alternative. Let me show it to you.
Why is it saying in the description of the positive? Because it says it represents a
Yeah, it's a bit confusing. It's a bit confusing because it says is the minimum positive, but the minimum positive is what, 0 or 0.00001, right? Now, what I wanted to show you, and I know this works, is similar, right? Mean safe integer. That's the one. So the number mean safe integer constant represents the minimum safe integer in JavaScript. That's the number. That's the minimum number in JavaScript. Yeah. So if I copy that, say it again. Safe integer means if you try to get a number smaller than that one, your system, your 64-bit CPU may not be able to deal with it. Yeah? That's why it's called safe, because beyond that may work, may not work. All right, so let's try that. And now it works. Yeah? So JavaScript really understands mean safe integer. To me, that will be relatively acceptable. Yeah? Because at least what you've done is, hey, by default, my highest number is the minimum one. So then any other number will be greater than that one, right? However, there is a better way to solve the problem. And I'm not going to show you how. That will be part of a board challenge. Not sure if it's there, or if not, it will be in the next one. I know some of you have asked to have more board challenges. Guys, that's up to you. Yeah? If everybody has solved the challenge by tomorrow afternoon, on Wednesday morning, there will be a new board challenge. Yeah? So that's up to you. If you work hard, we'll work hard as well. Cool. This is pretty much reduced. That has been the review of the upper beginner. Yeah? Reduce, vital. It's vital to get a job, to understand reduce. Personally, I will suggest you to go to DevTools, as I showed you on the last week, and create a basic snippet, how to get the total value, total number on a list, how to get the mean number, how to get the max number. Yeah? This type of exercises. Make sure you play with them on DevTools and always create this matrix. I built in here just to really follow the execution order. Anything else? No? So that was it from my side, guys. Thank you for watching.